Prime Minister Modi today sent a clear message to the world. India is not just surviving global instability, it's thriving through it. Speaking in Varanasi, he reaffirmed that India is firmly on track to become the third largest economy in the world. Prime Minister Modi's response comes just after US President Donald Trump slapped a 25% tariff on India and mocked India's ties with Russia, calling both countries dead economies. And while Trump rants about dead economies, let's take a look at the facts. India became world's fourth largest economy in 2025, surpassing Japan. IMF has now projected India's GDP to cross $6.8 trillion by 2030, poised to be the third largest economy in the world. In fact, India is one of the world's fastest growing major economies as per IMF, clocking over 6% GDP growth annually. Similar projections have also been made by other international agencies like the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. So, if there is a dead economy, Trump needs an education. Now, here are some other facts. India's government debt is about 81% of its GDP, while that of the US is 120%. And while India's household debt is also lower at 42% of the GDP, US's is 69%. Let's talk about household savings now. On the contrary, household savings in India are much higher at 18.1% of the GDP compared to US, 4% of the GDP. And here's the kicker. American corporations are expanding in India. Apple, Google, Tesla, all making India their next big bet. So while Trump throws tariff at his friend, global markets are voting with their wallets. India's message is clear. We will not be bullied into economic submission. We are growing, we are building, and we're not stopping anytime soon. Joining us on the show is Akash Jindal. He's an economist. Also with us is Dr. Harsh Dhaiya, a political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking time out for joining us on the show today. Akash Jindal, I want to come to you first. When Donald Trump says India is a dead economy, clearly either he is deliberately suppressing the facts or he doesn't understand how economies function and how they work and which are the top 5 economies in the world today.
Shweta, you have already given some data. I'll give you some additional data. Now, January to March of 2025, 7.4% is India's GDP growth. You said that we are amongst the fastest growing economies, amongst bigger economies. I have a slight contradiction. We are the fastest growing economy amongst bigger economies. Now, compare us with the economies which are bigger than us. US, China, Germany. Germany, 2023 and 2024, for past 2 years, continuously they have exhibited negative GDP. China is suffering from huge deflation. Now compare us with US. US, after the start of Russia-Ukraine war, June of 2022, inflation in US went to as high as 9.1%. Then, after the start of Russia-Ukraine war, US had 2 quarters of successive negative GDP growth. Technically, that's called recession. Then what happened was US has a concept called debt ceiling, the maximum debt which US can raise. They had to suspend that debt ceiling in order to get more debt just to run their economy. Now also, where is US? Now US, we already know the economy, there's a slowdown. High inflation has already impacted their economy. Now, if they impose tariffs, now there is a very interesting thing. Tariff is a famous word, buzzword, but you just have to see the tariffs which have been announced by the US and what have been implemented. We have to draw 2 charts. One, the tariffs announced by US at various points in time, then the actual implemented. There's a huge difference. So what US is doing is, using its tariffs as a psychological point just to pressurize, just to sort of arm twist countries in order to sign the treaties. But India, not going to relent at all. India, we are a domestic demand-driven economy. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. Our GST collection data, let me tell you, when tariffs started, that month itself, April, we had 2.36 lakh crore of GST collection, a record. Since then, we have been creating records after records since April till.
Okay, Mr. Jindal, thank you. Thank you for putting that in perspective. That gives you the scale of India's economy and it tells you how much has been achieved in the last decade or so, and India, as you mentioned, is the fastest growing major economy in the world. Now, is this just posturing, Harsh Dhaya, or does it reflect a deeper, perhaps, misreading of India's economy? I want to talk specifically on Russia, because it does look like US is now applying double standards on Russia, telling its allies like India who to buy oil and equipment from at a time when it believes that Ukraine is supposed to be India's problem. Our stance is very clear. The West's problem are not necessarily our problems.
Shweta ji, a couple of months back, I was meeting a delegation from Europe in Delhi. They were visiting and they asked me specifically about the Ukraine problem. I was very clear with them. Ukraine is a European and US problem. That is not our problem. It is not in our backyard. It is far away from us. And that is something the NATO countries have to solve amongst themselves. The Russia problem and the Ukraine problem is not India's conflict. That is their own conflict, and we have no role to play in it. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has played a key role of being a mediator between the two countries, and somewhat has been successful when he got a partial ceasefire done at that particular time. And coming back to the Indian political perspective, whatever Trump has said has no meaning to it. He's frustrated because he was unable to arm twist India in a one-sided trade deal. And what Modi ji has said today is not surprising either. He's a nationalist who has kept India's growth story and security at priority. What is truly surprising and beyond imagination is what Rahul Gandhi is saying. And he echoing the thought that Trump's thought that India is a dead economy. When I first heard that statement, I thought it is Bilawal Bhutto speaking. But then I was surprised that it is not Bilawal Bhutto, but Rahul Gandhi giving out that statement, because it sounded like what only an enemy of India can say. The leader of Indian opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, is like
Mr. Harsh Dhaya, I think it's fair to question every now and then, and that's the only way we grow. We only grow when we question, and there are consistent issues with Indian economy, but we'll come to that later. That's not the part of conversation today. I have to ask you, at this point, there's also a clarification coming from the Indian government that we have not really halted any oil, shipment from Russia. So we will continue to ship oil from Russia, and we are not going to buckle under pressure. Is that the way you look at US today, eye to eye, because you realize it's a bully and the only way it will budge is when you stand eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder, because conversations haven't worked?
Absolutely. India has never bowed to US or any international pressure. If you remember, when we did our nuclear test, we had even stricter sanctions at that particular time. India was not as strong as an economy at that particular time. And if we didn't bow at that time, in what, world will we bow when India is the fifth largest economy on the way to becoming the fourth largest economy of the world? And India is politically and economically a formidable force in the world, and there is no way that US can arm twist us. And we have clearly seen that the Prime Minister of the country has kept the interest of Indian farmers and dairy owners at priority, because if you look at the political perspective as well, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has a very good relationship and friendship with Trump. Had he wanted, had he had given in to his pressure, we wouldn't have this 25% tariff. So 25% tariff is in fact a gold medal.
No, but it doesn't. I'm sorry, I have to counter you right now, because it doesn't look like we have great relationship. Had we great relationships, Trump would not have made a comment on India being a dead economy. So it does look like it's posturing, because I'm sure he is not misreading. He knows India is not a dead economy, and he knows we are the fifth largest economy. I'm sure he is not that misread. So clearly, if he were any friends with India and we had any great relationship with India, it does look like our diplomacy with the US seemed to be failing in a way at this point. Yes, I think both of you are raising your hands. Okay, I'll let you complete, Mr. Dhaya. Yes.
Yeah, just one point. Probably I was not able to keep my point in a proper way. What I meant, despite having a great friendship with Trump, Prime Minister Modi didn't bow down. And it's not just about India. You look at US situation with Canada and with NATO countries or European Union. Trump is in war with all the countries.
Okay.
He is, what he's trying to save himself is from releasing the Epstein files. So all this global posturing and what he did, I guess yesterday, by deploying his submarines after a statement by ex-president of Russia, that is all to, negate the attention of US voters from Epstein files to these global issues, so that he can save his face in that
In
particular matter.
posturing, and come to think of it, every relationship with Donald Trump is transactional. There are no long-term friends or foes any which way in global geopolitics, and that's what's coming out of Trump's recent narrative. As we say, and as we now put firmly facts on ground, and that is India's growth story, which continues to be on a steady rise, growing to the tune of about 6.5%. That's the estimates as far as financial year 26 is concerned. I have to ask you, what impact will a non-negotiated trade deal or the current tariffs of 25% on India's exports have on Indo-US ties going forward? Let's imagine for a moment that India and US are not able to arrive at a trade deal because farmers, farming sector and dairy are crucial subjects and India is not ready to budge. What sort of impact are we anticipating?
I think a very high quality and a very offbeat question. I love questions like this. But prior to that, with due regards and a lot of respect, let me correct both of you, my friends. Both of you said we are the fifth largest economy. No, we are already the fourth largest economy. And today the Prime Minister also said we are on the way of becoming the third biggest economy. That's what we are targeting now. So we are already ahead of Japan, because Japan, January to March of 2025 also, they had negative GDP growth, minus 0.2%, whereas we grew at a whopping 7.4%. Now your question is very interesting. If it's not negotiated, because we, as you're very right, as my friend Harsh is also very right, we have to protect the interest of our daily people, we have to protect the interest of our farmers. That's paramount for us. That's very important for us. We are not at all going to compromise on that. If 25% and some so-called penalty continues, who's going to be impacted? Firstly, it's going to be US. What's going to happen is inflation is US is going to increase. See, US has been announcing tariffs and then postponing them, then deferring them. Why so? Because what happens is US, the consumers and US own population, their own citizens, they will be impacted. US is suffering from high inflation right from the start of Russia-Ukraine war. I just gave you data. After the start of Russia-Ukraine war, June of 2022, the inflation went to as high as 9.1%, which played havoc with bond yields, bond prices, and even certain banks. So can US afford inflation? No, US and US citizens can't afford higher inflation. So first is US which is going to suffer, because all of a sudden overnight, they can't have factories of producing those things which they are importing from India. So what will happen is, who have they levied tariffs on? They have levied tariffs on their own importers. So they'll be making things costlier for them. So a non-negotiated trade deal, it would have some impact on our exporters, but not too much of impact, because remember, we are a domestic demand-driven economy. We are not China, who is dependent on exports. Our biggest strength, whenever I go to global forums, is domestic consumption. Domestic buying and consumption, they are the biggest strength.
That's some $80 billion worth of exports that could likely be impacted. And that could, yes, Mr. Jindal.
Yeah. See, apart from that, what we have done is, we have also diversified. Our government has very intelligently, and I salute the Modi government for the efforts they have been doing. Our government has very intelligently diversified other countries also. We just had a trade deal with UK. We had a trade deal with 4 European nations. Plus our honorable Prime Minister, I have the highest respect, he went to 5 other nations. There also we had MOUs. So we are already diversifying. So we are already building shock absorbers. We are already approaching new markets. We are already approaching them and tying up. I think ultimately what's going to happen is, let me tell you, a trade deal is imminent. It will be signed, whereas India would protect the interest of our dairy farmers, agriculturists. We'll be exporting to US. Plus, we have already exported to new markets. So ultimately, end of the day, it's going to be a gift from Donald Trump that we'll be exporting to US the same which we were. Plus, since we have new friends and we have explored new markets, we'll be exporting to them also. See, we have to see this Narendra Modi government. This is a government of brilliant people. Since 2020, the global economy has been a slowdown, but they have navigated the economy in such a way that we have grown at very, very fast pace. After the 2020 was Corona time. We just came out of Corona. They had a huge Russia-Ukraine war, which impacted the global economy. Then you see the Israel issue, Israel-Iran war, many other geopolitical conflicts. Then the tariffs issue. The entire world is going through a slowdown where India is performing brilliantly. What is it? It's not magic. It's some brilliant planning and brilliant implementation by Narendra Modi and his government and his, teammates. So that's how they have navigated through the toughest of time. The past 5 years have been the toughest for the global economy. And it's not Akash Dal or Akash Dal. Global agencies are saying that during these days of slowdown, if there's any economy which is like performing like a shining star, that's India. And there's data which all endorses that. So today
There's
also,
enough and more. I understand, Mr. Jindal. There's enough and more data which is to suggest and prove that India is doing exemplary well when it comes to being one of the fastest growing major economies in the world, and at the same time a shining beacon of light amid all the global doom. But before I end this show, Advocate Harsh Daya, one of the things that Prime Minister today said was it's time now to focus on Swadeshi. So the question therefore is, how viable is it today to build global supply chains, to be a global manufacturing hub, while also talk about economic nationalism? Aren't these two concepts not contrary to each other? On one hand, you want to build everything in India, and at the same time, you also want to be the building center for the rest of the world?
Shweta ji, like it is said that every adversity brings a hidden opportunity. And I guess the same was being put forward by Akash Jindal ji. He was saying the same thing, that in this adversity, there is a hidden opportunity for Indian companies and also for the government. When you talk about self-reliance, it is not just about the Indian agriculture sector and the dairy sector, which Prime Minister Modi is trying to protect, but it is also about the IT sector and the technology sector. Because what I feel, we have recently seen example of Naira Energy being blocked access to Microsoft services and emails because of some European Union sanctions. Now, these are the kind of challenges we'll face day in and day out going forward. As more and more globalization happens, as we become more dependent upon these foreign companies, be it American companies, be it European companies, now it is time for self-reliance in IT sector as well. The first and foremost step that should be taken by the government and by the Indian Inc. should be localization of these data centers in India. We cannot be dependent upon data centers that are in China or USA or Europe, because our access to those data centers can be blocked anytime. We have seen homegrown companies like Zoho Books or the Zoho Corporation in the larger sense, who have done really well, and they have competed with these foreign companies neck to neck, and they're giving them tough competition. If we have more such homegrown companies and if we have data centers in India, then that can greatly protect us in this era of digital warfare or digital blockage, if anything
Right.
of that sort happens.
As
So
much as
that is the
right.
self-reliance we need to go forward with.